Hello everyone, Mipa here, trying to make your Monday a little better and maybe even something to look forward to. We are here with the third episode of MDVN, My Dreams, Vandas Nightmare. There's not much to really say about this because it's like the others, but I would just like to point out that we've reached 14 subscribers, and the reason I'd like to point this out it's just because I didn't think that we would gain 2 subscribers in the time of a month. So thank you for that, and if any of you are enjoying what I'm doing and haven't subscribed, if you could do that, it would be much appreciated. Don't worry, I'm not going to be saying this like every video. I just wanted to point it out because I was just so happy to see that we've actually gained 2 more people joining us lately. Anyway, I'll stop talking. I hope that you enjoy the third episode of My Dreams, Vandas Nightmare. Vanda woke up very confused. People were staring at her, people she didn't even know. Some of the faces seemed familiar, but she had no idea why. In fact, she didn't even know where or who she was. She was in a tank of water, but she was able to breathe fine and see clearly. That didn't seem right either. Outside the tank seemed to resemble a school, but why would a tank of water be in a school? Vanda tried to speak to the people watching her, but nothing came out, not even bubbles. A 17-year-old girl nodded and tried to explain to Vanda what happened. Apparently, Vanda had gotten extremely hurt on the battlefield, and they managed to use a special tank of water to keep her alive. None of this made sense, but Vanda didn't really know what was considered normal. Vanda spent about a month in these conditions. That meant about a month of being watched, studied, constantly pitied, and silenced. She had so many questions left with no answers because she physically couldn't ask them. In return, she would get asked yes or no questions she'd have to shake or nod her head to by kids that were probably only 2 or 3 years older than her. There were no adults in sight either. She never really saw anyone younger than her though, as well. The youngest the people around her seemed to be would be her age, and that was most of the kids she saw. By the way, these kids her age actually ended up being kids that I go to school with, if you're asking about the actual dream. But these people never even tried to listen to her or even try to understand any of her methods of communication. All they did was pity her and act like she was a saint, giving her gifts she didn't even want. Once, someone who said they used to be her friend tried to throw her a piece of bread, even though Vanda couldn't eat. Even then, the bread only made it halfway up the glass and stuck to it. Another time was when someone who apparently was her best friend gave her a puffer fish because Vanda loved animals. Even though the puffer fish constantly tried to poison her, and it took Vanda a week to get it removed. Even with her lack of communication and being listened to, Vanda was a great observer and got the vibe that she was often one to sit and listen to people around her anyway. So, while she couldn't ask questions or get anyone to listen to her, she was able to collect information from what she overheard or saw. They had told her they found her rescuing them near the outside of the battlefield, although she didn't feel like it was as much of a rescue, seeing that kids her age would still run past her water tank in fighting gear, and she never knew if they made it back. She felt bad for them and had wanted to help, but they treated her horribly, even though they seemed to believe they were helping her, as if she was a baby duck that would never be able to fly. And that made it really hard to keep that want to help or even believe that she could. As time passed and Vanda lived her new life in the water tank, she started to change, both mentally and physically. Mentally, she started disliking people more and almost preferred her time alone. She even started to lose her sense of guilt when watching the kids run by to fight. Physically, she was getting weaker. The water that was keeping her alive was trying to change how her body worked completely, and her skin started turning a pale blue. When this started happening, the older kids had a new task: to get Vanda out of the water tank. But obviously they didn't feel the need to update Vanda on any progress that was made, so one day the kids decided to take Vanda while she was asleep to do the surgery with no warning at all. So clearly she was confused when she woke up in this bed and was told the surgery went well. They had put a totem of undying in her back, and that was now keeping her alive without the water in the tank. Vanda was glad she had regained her ability to walk, talk, and even breathe or be out of the water without cracking, but her mind was stuck on one thing. These teenagers just did surgery on her without asking or even giving any warning. This didn't seem right, but she finally felt like she probably did before the incident. At least she assumed so. Now that Vanda could walk around, she chose to explore the school. It all seemed so familiar, and she found herself navigating the halls with ease, although she didn't remember being here. It made sense that she felt the place was familiar though, as she had been told many stories of her being an amazing asset in the fight against the boss, and a great friend. Vanda liked the good reputation she had, but wished she remembered it, and that it didn't cause people to still pity her, even though she was feeling completely fine now. Even now, as she walked the halls like everyone else, she wasn't treated the same. She would often feel like she might as well still be in the water tank with how people treated her. Like when there was a school meeting, everyone was being given totems to give them a better chance of surviving against the boss's forces. Anya, the leader of the happenings at the school, had given Vanda a nod to acknowledge that she already had a totem because of the surprise surgery. But even then, Vanda was given another 2 totems, while the people that were actually helping were given 1. She found this unfair, but no one would listen to her enough to change it. Not only was she being pitied, yet ignored as much as before, but she was even being tested and experimented on by the older kids still. They'd still take blood samples, test her sight, reflexes, speed, heart rate, and more, daily. She'd spend at least half an hour in the nurse's office every day on these tests. Every time, Vanda would insist that she get to help people battling outside, or at least go out there, but she'd always get the same answer. Once the tests are done and we know you're stable and healthy, we'll let you back on the field. But Vanda knew as much as everyone else that the tests would never be done and they would never come to a stable conclusion. Eventually, to try and help Vanda accept this life, they made a bedroom for her out of things she was known to like before the incident. Around this time, Vanda found out the totem had given her the ability to hover and float, so she'd spend a lot of time floating in her room, waiting to be called down to the nurse's office. Eventually, Vanda couldn't take it anymore. She hated it here and couldn't accept the life she was being given. So she found Anya and told her how she felt. Anya tried to insist that they were trying to help her, but Vanda had plenty to say about that. She hated being ignored, pitied, and tested 24/7. Vanda wouldn't take no for an answer and followed Anya all day, constantly pleading her argument, until finally, Anya gave in. She said that Vanda would spend 1 more week in the school before they'd send her to a new place she'd better enjoy. And that is where I will be leaving it off for today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. Episode 4 will come. Exactly when, I'm not fully sure, but it will come, I promise. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great week. Goodbye!